Hey everybody out there, this is Seto, and today for you guys we're going to be talking about some interesting things, and that is we are going to be talking about an old school term in Yu-Gi-Oh! A deck actually called the Fusion deck. Now you're asking yourself, what is the freaking Fusion deck for you new school players out there? The Fusion deck is nowadays called the Extra deck. Yes, and we're going to be talking about the evolution of the Fusion deck from the Fusion deck to the Extra deck and how it's evolved in Yu-Gi-Oh! Over the course of time. So, a lot of you old school players will remember back when you got your first paper playmat, probably from the Yugi, the Jogi, the Jogi, sorry Joey, the Yugi, the Joey, the Kaiba, the Pegasus structure decks, and even into the GX era, you had this extra deck called, it wasn't called the extra deck back in the day, it was called the Fusion deck. And this is where your fusions resided. Now, back in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh! 2003, 2004, 2005, all the way up to the Synchro era, not all decks needed to use fusions. Yes, that sounds crazy, doesn't it? But no, not a lot of decks really abused the fusions. Fusions were kind of a neg plus to some decks, especially when Poly was out. Yes, you had Fusion Gate, but it kind of, you know, banishing your monsters, not bringing them back was kind of a So some people use King of the Swamp and things like that, but a lot of decks really didn't use fusions. In the early part of Yu-Gi-Oh! You had Beatdown, you had Hand Control, and the first deck that really abused the Extra deck, or the Fusion deck, please forgive me if I'm confusing anybody out there when I'm going back and forth between Fusion and Extra, but the first deck to really abuse it was the Magical Scientist deck. This was a deck that pretty much was trying to make an OTK with Catapult Turtle and just swinging out your opponent's monsters and constantly trying to bash them down with Catapult Turtle, inflicting damage by launching them. So this was the first deck that did it. And even after Magical Scientist went down to 1 and this deck was still prevalent, people started just splashing in Magical Scientist into the main deck so they could go into these fusions for certain situations and, you know, doing certain things. Eventually, that kind of died off. And the next time we really see the Fusion deck being used is in Thousand Eyes Restrict format, when Megamorphosis really expanded the Fusion deck. This is when Thousand Eyes Restrict and other fusions were used in combination to bring out a lot of fusion monsters. This was the first time the Fusion deck actually served a main purpose, I guess you could say. After Thousand Eyes Restrict format, we really don't see the evolution of the Fusion deck, really. We see Heroes come out, we see other decks using fusions, but it's really not that big. I mean, Heroes, when they first came out, were very weak. They weren't really that good. The fusions were Maso Manos originally. Some of them were good, some of them were okay, some of them were horrible, really, you have to admit, by looking back at the past. So Heroes were not using, you know, even though that Heroes used this, and this was the first archetype that was kind of really based on the Fusion deck specifically, really, not a lot of people use them. And then you fast forward to Cyber Cistern OTK. This was another deck that abused the Fusion deck used in Cyber Cistern. Kind of like what Magical Scientist did back in the day. You brought these big monster behemoths out, you equipped them with big powerful equip cards, and you try to OTK your opponent by pushing through, by using things like Giant Trunade, Cold Wave, and things of that nature. And Heavy Storm was that one at the time too. So this was another deck that kind of used the Extra deck. Then eventually Heroes and Cyber Dragon started getting better support and becoming better, and eventually these decks kind of became what the Fusion deck was mainly used for. These were the type of decks that mainly used the Fusion deck. Not a lot of other decks used them. Granted, there were some other decks, some Pacific decks that used it using Fusion Gate and things like that, and King of the Swamp, like I said before, but those were very few and far between. Then the Fusion deck got completely makeover, actually. It's very interesting how you actually look at it. Over the course of this time, Synchros came out, and after Synchros, pretty much the game completely changed on how the Fusion deck became the Extra deck now, and completely changed the game and how it changed. Before, in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh!, you could run as many fusions as you wanted to in the Fusion deck. Now, by this point in the game, it was restricted to 15 cards in the Extra deck now, or Fusion deck. And by this time, pretty much, you know, people could use Synchros, and any deck really could splash in Synchros. You just needed a tuner that worked with your archetype or theme or whatever, and then you can make a Synchro monster. You can make a Stardust Dragon, or you know, Thought Ruler Archfiend, whatever. So it gave access for all decks to use the new extra deck, originally called the Fusion deck. And you go all through the Synchro era and you see this. I mean, Contact Fusion with Beast Glider Beast, they use the extra deck a lot. But Synchros really did something that no other mechanic had really done. It abused this other deck. Then you get the Xyz era, and it makes it even easier than what Synchros did. You don't even have to play tuners in your main deck. No, you can just use generic cards in the field, overlay, make this monster go off. And that was something that gave a lot of versatility. It became a different level of toolboxing, which we still see to this day. And now going into the future, we see another way that the extra deck is evolved, using pendulums. The reason I'm kind of speeding up here, guys, is because a lot of this new stuff, Synchros and Xyz monsters, this is stuff that we still deal with on a daily basis, and it's not that too far in our memories, hopefully. Maybe for some players it is, because going back, Synchros have been out for a while now, but whatever. That's beside the point, and Xyz as well. But now going forward, we have pendulums. And another way we pretty much have used the extra deck again for OTK potential to some extent. Look at Quill Pulse. They pendulum summon a whole bunch of monsters from your extra deck. You try to push through your opponent, OTK them, just kind of like back in the day when it was a fusion deck with Cyrus Cistern and Magical Scientist. But we'll have to wait and see how much more it develops. We're starting to have pendulums now that are, you know, Xyz and tuners. So we'll have to wait to see how this, you know, evolves in the future and how the game changes with the extra deck now. Because pendulums are given a different mechanic. Pendulums, however, at the moment, cannot be splashed in like Xyz and Synchros. It's more of an archetype thing. Yes, you have normal pendulums, but you know, we don't see pendulums being played in every single freaking deck out there. Yes, we can do that with Zephyros, but sometimes it messes with the consistency of the deck. It's not, you know, it's not in the extra deck exactly where we can just call upon it when we need it, and it doesn't mess up our, you know, main deck plays and things like that. The deck can still run smoothly. So I feel that that's what pendulums have done to the game, but that's beside the point. So this is a little history, I guess you could say, on the Fusion deck and its evolution to become the extra deck and how it's changed the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's made with Synchros and Xyz, it's made it more available to all decks, and it's made it being able to be used to get out of certain situations and things of that nature, and made it more toolboxy, I guess you could say, which has been very helpful for many decks. And with pendulums going forward, we'll have to see how it evolves, because pendulums are still kind of in their early stages to some degree, even though we've had Quill Pulse and other decks. But you can see the evolution becoming now with Xyz pendulums and tuner pendulums and things of that nature. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. But this is just trip down memory lane, I guess you could say, for you guys, and on the evolution of the extra deck, from the fusion to the extra. So till next time, guys, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling, remember to always have fun dueling, guys, and till next time, I'll see you. Seto Kaiba, I'm out of here, guys, and good luck dueling to all of you. Take care, everybody.